We are back on Testify, and today with me is Catherine Ngovo Macau. She's a Kenyan living in the UK. We left it at where she now had settled in the UK and started working and got the first son. So the story continues, Catherine.
Yeah, so it's now, at that point, it's about just juggling between working full time, being a wife, and being a mother, and in the UK, we haven't got house help, so it's obviously really tough, just trying to find the time to do
So
it
how
all.
is that? Let me just ask, how is that? So you go with your baby to work, or how does it work?
It's difficult, you find childcare, you either take your child to nursery or to a childminder. For us, we used a childminder, but generally it's difficult. It's expensive. Childcare is very expensive, but for me, I did have to work full time, so it was just juggling it all together, and that was difficult. And before I know it, I'm just coasting into just mediocrity and just getting by day. And this is going on, for another few years until in 2012 I fell pregnant with my second son, and it was, during our second ultrasound scan that I found out that it was going to be a difficult pregnancy.
So why was it going to be a difficult one?
So while we were having the second scan, the sonographer discovered that something was not quite right with our baby. He was not growing as he should, and so they thought there were issues. So it became high-risk pregnancy. So then they had to monitor me every week. So it was just for the second part of the pregnancy, it was just going through checks week after week and seeing all sorts of consultants, and that by itself was not easy.
Yeah. So how did that affect you as a mother, as a woman, as a wife?
That was scary. That was difficult. I mean, my husband was very supportive. I've got a wonderful church family. They were very supportive, but essentially it was very difficult. But nothing prepared me for what I would go through once the baby was with us. I somehow just thought, while the doctors had, given all these doubts about the pregnancy and the baby, there was still hope that everything was going to be fine. But that was not the case. When we finally had the baby, we found out that he was actually very ill.
Mm-hmm. And then did you think about God and what he would, possibly do in the situation to rescue the situation? Did you question him?
They were very desperate and dark days. My belief system was tested to the core. I did not doubt God. Mm-hmm. I had questions, definitely. I have obviously gone through, other tragedies previously, but it was a difficult time. I knew God was the one on my side. I knew God was the one fighting my corner, but it was just for me trying to deal with my emotions, trying to adjust, because a baby is meant to be good news. Mm-hmm. But also in this case, it was just really difficult getting around, my emotions around the possibility of actually having and living with a really ill child. So that was a struggle, in my belief system as well.
All right.
Yeah.
So finally you got the child, mm-hmm. but the child was ill. Mm. And so what happens next? What happened in the process of taking care of this baby?
So the first thing is that we had to stay in hospital for about 5 weeks. And that was really difficult. It's a different world altogether, because my first son was perfectly fine. So you just leave hospital after, first day. Yeah. But here we were 5 weeks, in special care with our baby. And my life was just revolving around expressing milk, just doing these 2-hourly feeds. And, I was struggling through it. And it was just, my husband had to be at work as well as support us. So it was a real struggle. So now
the child, of course, you've been in hospital for 5 weeks. Mm. but now eventually you have to leave hospital.
Yeah, so when it came to time to leave hospital, the hospital were fantastic with us. They put us up as a family in the hospital just to see how we would cope with a sick child at home, and we had to just learn, the basics. I mean, even though we were going home, he was still being tube fed, so we had to learn how to feed him by tube at home every 2 hours. And even though we would get help if needed, but we were going to be the ones doing it. So it was just those details really that were, difficult to deal with. But I remember the last night before we left hospital, we actually just knelt down as a family around our baby, and we sang, "Great is your faithfulness, oh God." And we knew that was going to be the constant in our lives. We are going to have to depend on God's faithfulness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How old was your son at this point, the firstborn?
He was 7.
7.
Yeah.
And how did this affect him in terms, now your attention has probably most likely shifted to this other baby.
Yeah.
Was he affected in any way by that?
I think he was. I mean, we were always a family struggling, obviously. And I think he was seeing, obviously, his little brother is getting a lot of attention. But I don't think the attention part was the most difficult. He was just seeing his little brother struggling, through the feeds, through not just developing as he should. So I think he was struggling, but, he had a bit of spiritual insight, and that helped, because he's the one who was telling me all the time, "Amani is going to be all right. Amani is going to do well, so don't worry, mommy." So I think he probably had less doubt than me, and that was helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Please allow me to ask at this point, what did the doctors say was wrong with the baby? What was the sickness?
So, I mean, by the time we left hospital, they actually not made a proper diagnosis. They were still, trying to involve a lot of consultants into it. But finally, he was diagnosed with a very rare genetic condition called Cornelia de Lange, which involves just growth issues. The baby does not develop as he should. He did not have, the proper muscle tone, which meant he could not feed properly by mouth, and that's why we had to tube feed him. So a lot of issues. He had issues with his heart, issues with his eyes, issues, just so many different issues that he just needed so many consultants to help him through. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Then after a few months of taking care of the baby, unfortunately the baby passes on. Tell me about that moment.
So even before that, when we finally now got home and adjusted, to just this, very difficult time, actually it was those months, about 5 months, that my life would change, because you're forced to live in the present, You're forced to just concentrate on very simple things, just the baby putting on weight, just being able to take those feeds, expressing milk. Your life actually changes. And it was during those months that I began to think, what is really important in life? My perspective changed. My value system totally changed. I began to just adjust, my life. Things like how I looked at success totally changed. I began to think, well, if I'm alive and healthy, then I've got so much to be grateful for. I realized that actually I needed other people, I was depending on so many other people. I needed my husband, I needed my older son, I needed my friends just to help me with chores. I needed, my church family. So it was just things like those that made my life really turn around. So it was actually those 5 months that my life totally changed. I began to see, well, I do not have to sit back just watching life from the sidelines. I could actually jump in there and just enjoy life as an adventure, something that, in the previous years I wasn't doing. I somehow was just, juggling everything that I needed to. But it was now those months that made me realize, what? Life is to be lived. I need to just get in there and enjoy my life and just smell my roses, appreciate what I already have, enjoy my relationships, I do not have to wait for a perfect moment or wait for, the day I achieved this and that. I realized every day was a gift and I could enjoy that. So in August, that same year, that was now 6 months later, I was actually now mentally and emotionally much stronger, and we were just into it all. And then just one morning we wake up and everything is normal. I just give the tube feed as usual. And, my baby, Amani, just throws up and then he just goes quiet. And for me, I'm just thinking, it's just one of those things. But when he was just so quiet, I thought something must be wrong. So we called, the ambulance, and they came so quickly, like within 3 minutes. But for me, it was such a long time. I was thinking, what's happening here? And they kept me on the line, and they got me to help him breathe. And, my older son was just shouting, Amani, you can't do this. You got to breathe through this. And, when the paramedics finally got there, they said he's had a cardiac arrest and we have to get to hospital. Luckily, the hospital is just really close to our home. So we get to hospital and they try to resuscitate him. And by this time, they've called in my husband as well. And so for like 1 hour, we just there waiting, just hoping, just praying. And finally, they come and break the news to us, and that was really, really difficult. Nothing prepares you for that moment. Yeah.
So now you have to sort of begin another life, because you were now adjusting to taking care of your baby. You were doing pretty much well, but now the baby is gone.
Yeah, that was extremely difficult. It's one thing to go through the death of a child, but remember, we are in the UK, we are away from our family. The first thing was that we needed to get help, and luckily my mom was able to come immediately just before the funeral, and that was absolutely helpful. It was, the weeks that we had to follow, she helped me because I could not pray, I could not, I was just in such a foul mood, but she was so good with me, so patient, so that was helpful. But just the emotion of it was really difficult. It was just about, just 1 minute, one day you have your baby, the next day you haven't. So it's just, even just the process of just clearing the house of baby things, putting away the cot beds, putting away all the baby clothes, that is just difficult. It was just, everything about it was really tough. Yeah.
And of course, it was a journey now, moving from or moving on or getting healed. How did the journey come about finally? Does it affect you till date? How has it been so far?
It's been a very fragile and delicate healing journey. It was just living one day at a time. Of course, those first few days are very difficult, even just going through the motions of arranging for a funeral far away from home. But, I just needed to find answers for myself. I wasn't just going to, I'm not one of these people that you just blank out everything that's happening. I took time just to dig deep, find answers, like how was I going to adjust to this? How was I going to live? How was I going to explain this to our older son? How was I going to, make him believe that God is still good? So it was just a process, really, just taking things one day at a time. And, slowly you just begin to adjust around it. I've got friends who helped me so much. I've got my family, they totally supported me. My husband was very constant in his faith. He helped me through the panic attacks I suffered then. And that was totally helpful. But as I say, it has been a long journey of healing, and I'm at a place where I can actually think back about it, not with so much pain. Of course, I still, there are days I still miss my baby. There are days that, I still cry over it, but I'm at a place of newness now, a place of healing.
It's amazing how having God in your life can, help you through the difficult moments of life.
Absolutely, absolutely. And yeah, for me, what I think is no matter the obstacles, no matter the challenges we go through, God is real and God does help people. And things do get better. He's definitely helped me.
Amen. Yeah. Amen. I like that. And at that point, we take a quick break. Now we get to hear what happens after the whole journey that Catherine had to walk through. She finally wrote a book. We'll be getting more about it in a short while.